From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent?
The man who lifts condominiums off his chest.
Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. I'm James, still 2 weeks under the weather with a high fever. I've got a jumper on. It's August, so I'm going to make this intro very short indeed. YouTube, podcast, Instagram, Twitter, DonMuraco.com for all your signed merchandise, and that is the quickest intro I'm ever going to do. And I am, of course, going to hand it now to the man himself, the original rock, the beach bum. It is the magnificent one himself, Don Muraco. How are you doing?
Bang, how you doing? Good to see you. I hope you're feeling... Well, that's a long... food poisoning, 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's probably is. I don't know what food poisoning is. I've got some sort of mysterious new disease that I've managed to cultivate.
Little bug.
I know, yeah. I've got the... Oops, I've smashed my microphone in with the water as well. I've got the water going. Today we're going to be doing WrestleMania 3. So, but obviously before we do that, just wrestling deaths, I'm afraid to say. We've had a few. There was Burt Prentice, Bobby Eaton, who you told me before that you didn't really meet, but one person you did meet and have some good stories on is the assassin Jody Hamilton. So, what do you remember of Jody? I suppose where did you first come across Jody?
In Georgia territory. He was, I think he had a home there, but he was a power down this. He was a beautiful technical worker. Boy, if you look at the styles and stuff that they have now, it was nothing, like me, he couldn't get booked today if he had to. But he was the mask guy, you have no expression, you can't, there's no pain, no arrogance, no laughter, just you're all with your hands and your gestures. And he's one of those guys that his timing, his timing and his psychology were just flawless. Then he was with Tom Ernesto, and they tagged up for that's where they became the Assassins. And I was reading that Larry Hamilton was his brother, the Mauler, Missouri Mauler, and he was a hell of a worker too. Boy, if you're a fan and going there, you saw those guys, you made you believers. They were solid workers.
How did Jody, and obviously you were a mask guy for about 2 weeks in Florida, but how does one successfully convey emotions when you can't use your face, and how did the assassin do it?
I guess you got to have it in you. You did the hands and begging off and show the aggressiveness and your body gestures. That movement, you're working a little extra. I guess those guys, I don't know what it is. Why lifelong masks. Dick Byers, Bill Eadie, Tim Woods after he became wrestling #1, Johnny Walker, wrestling 2. They all got that mask and they just lived by it. And they travel with it. Mil Moscatus, never take it off. So I guess it's, becomes kind of an identity.
Still like that story when he said, "Hey, Aaron," when he's got the mask on.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Mill, when he's not got the mask on.
Yeah. He was good about it, though. He was, Moscow was a wise guy, Angela's always breaking somebody.
Just going back onto the assassin then. So because I really don't know much about him. I was doing all the research for WrestleMania 3 that we'll talk about in a minute. What were his sort of big hits? What were his big territories and his big feuds?
The South, from North Carolina area, whatever states they encompassed back then. North Carolina and the Florida territory, and then the Georgia Championship Wrestling. I would assume he moved to Tennessee and such. The same as Joel Deaton. They did a lot. They were asked me if I never met Joel just to shake hands and say hello as he's coming through territories and stuff. And never heard a bad word said about either one of them. So, both guys were, stellar performers and evidently pretty solid guys.
And the virtue of having to wear a mask is that you don't age.
That's true. Well, your body ages. You can't hide that.
Now, I do know that he had a bit of a gut in his later years, but somehow he was like stocky enough that he just looked more badass in the end.
Yeah, they were badass. He was a solid. He was, I don't think anybody wanted to fool with him. He was, he looked like a pretty rugged guy. I was towards the end of his career that I got to know with him in, up in Georgia and Atlanta and stuff. Georgia had split. Ray Gunkel died, and he was Georgia Championship Wrestling. So as soon as that happened, the Fullers and Jim Barnett and all of the Briscoes and everybody, they swooped down on it. And Ann Gunkel ran her own territory. And I guess he did a good job. She ran a decent territory. Because Georgia was an easy job to work. You had Georgia, Macon, Augusta, Albany, but 3 or 4, 4 or 5 solid towns, and the rest of the time, spot shows. But everything close, home every night.
And I think really the lasting legacy is that he was in the power plant, he was involved in WCW, and just sort of in the back, almost like in the gorilla position that Gorilla Monsoon may have been in, sort of the WCW equivalent as far as I can gather.
Sure, he had a great mind, underneath that mask, and he had all his nothing over the top, nothing that was overly flamboyant or overly nothing in comparison to today's shows. Very solid, very believable, very credible. So he didn't really have to do much because people believed in him.
When you as good as so many of the old timers are and were, you don't need the hoopla to sort of go along with it. The work speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Just before we go into the main event, then of WrestleMania 3, the biggest WrestleMania probably that there ever be, and you were on it, of course, in the opening match. And but before we do, and I've not teed you up on this, but the Olympics. 2 weeks worth of the Olympics. What did you watch? What were you impressed with? And you must have been keeping your eye on the amateur ranks in wrestling as well.
Well, the Olympics?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I came in back and forth, the boxing, the wrestling, soccer. A lot of we had a girl from Hawaii, Calypso Moore, won the gold medals for surfing. She went to the same school I did, as did Obama. We all graduated, and all have absolutely nothing in common.
They must have had some good teachers, though.
Yeah, it was a great school. I sure didn't bring in any honors. But,
Is there like a list of like faces on the wall of like notable alumni?
Probably. Well, the guy that invented the artificial, the Hart, the pacemaker, not the pacemaker, the artificial, the heart, the heart transplant. He went there. AOL. There's a lot of wealthy. All the missionaries. It's a missionary school. The missionaries, the Dillinghams and the Thurstons, Twig Smiths, and all those names from Hawaii. They came over were the original white people, the Howleys.
So if you ever go back to the school, make sure your picture's above Obama's, for God's sake.
I think they got my picture underneath the table somewhere.
on the dog door.
Yeah, or over the bathroom wall.
No, it should be on the top, and we all know it.
God.
I'll head on to the main event then, and I've got so many questions for you. Even for me, who is just like a habitual question writer and asker, I've written a ton for you, and I'm going to tee you up with WrestleMania 3, so I'm going to read this as well. So, March 29th, 1987, Pontiac Silverdome, Detroit, Michigan, $1.6 million in ticket sales, claimed attendance of 93,173, 78,000 according to Dave Meltzer / Zane Breslov, who was the promoter of the event at the time. When you were walking into the arena, and we'll get to other, all the matches and everything in a minute, how many people were you told were in attendance at the time, or was that just not ever brought up and you only heard it afterwards?
At the end, they gave us that 90 whatever million it was going to be. I don't know. I don't know how somebody else get that type of count, but 70,000. It was full. There was no room for anybody else to get in.
Did you ever develop like a almost sixth sense of counting how many people were in the crowd at any given night, so you could work out what your payout might be?
Yeah, pretty much. You kind of you could get a handle on it and get after 20 years, 15, 20 years. Yeah, you get a look at the house.
Well, going to the Detroit territory then, and could you give us like an overview of the Detroit territory? I know the heyday was sort of like maybe early 70s, and then by 74 it died off. So sort of maybe like a potted history of Detroit. I know you maybe went there a couple of times over the years as well to battle the Sheik or whoever else it may have been.
I went there only for Vince, only for WWE.
Oh.
I never went. It was notoriously bad for payoffs. Now, I can't, I never experienced it, but just by word of mouth from the other guys, they had a handful of guys that were there all the time. Bobo and Tex McKenzie, Furpo, the guy, Curry and his
Wild Bill.
Bull Curry and his son. Yeah, and a bunch of guys that lived there in Detroit. Naturally, it's a big city, so there were conglomerates like Indianapolis, the Ohio territories were running. They had the old time promoters and stuff, so they were all conglomerates of everything else. So I don't know who was living there. I just mentioned Mickey Doyle, but he's from Detroit, and he used to, he worked in there. But if you look at the old cards, they'd have 30, 35, 40 guys on a card. I mean, they were just. With the Sheik always in the main event and throwing fire and, 1 minute matches and stuff like that,
So. What do you believe sort of attributed to Detroit's downfall sort of by the mid-70s?
I would have to only guess from hearsay that, all the talk and stuff that's going on would just be probably the Sheik himself. Too long holding the belt, like on, being the champion, the fire, the minute, 2 minute matches, and of course he had, a lot of talent to carry the rest of the card. But I imagine, when you build up a star, you got your Don Muraco or, your Ric Flair or whoever else built up to go in and face the Sheik, Eddie Farr, the original Sheik, and you go in and you give him 2 minutes, after all that, the people probably, get a little disappointed.
If they can predict the main event, after 10 years.
Yeah, it's
so when
throwing the fire.
Sorry. So when you were with the WWF, 81 onwards, how often, after national expansion, I should say, is how often did the WWF start going to Detroit then?
Probably monthly, I'd guess. There wasn't, the territory was so big at the time, it's hard to run programs in there. I remember me and Snuka, when we were hot all over the world, me and Snuka went into Cobo Hall, their normal, and drew a dud. Just, it was average for the houses they were drawing at the time. It was maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people, for on a program that had been selling out all over the country, all over North America and beyond. It was just so it was a building process. to where we, and I tell you the Steamboat story. Ricky and I, we built it up in single matches. And when it came to a blow off, we went from, where did we wrestle? One place that we wrestled was went to Joe Louis Arena. And the only time I ever saw Steamboat was disappointed or upset or angry was they brought Hulk in a tag. They teamed him and Hulk up, and they brought Fuji up from a manager to wrestle in a tag team. We wrestled Hulk and Steamboat in a tag team match, and he figured we could have carried it, in a cage or some kind of gimmick match. That we could have carried a lights out match. That we could have carried it ourselves, but that I didn't really. I agreed with him, but as far as I was concerned, I was used to getting Fuji a payday after blowing off somebody, or started with Lou. He'd come in as my manager, working as my partner, and with Snuka and Rogers or something else, and then it went to Fuji because Fuji was still a hell of a worker. And went to Fuji. So I didn't really look at it that way. And it wouldn't knock on our payoff that much really to begin with anyway. I was have to wonder, why are they paying me that way?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Hulk Hogan he's not leaving without 5 figures in his pocket from that one.
Oh, no, yeah. Well, that's, he's the star. So you got to sell out in Joe Louis Arena. You got to get him on the card, tag team or not.
So when did you notice that Detroit was Cobo Hall or the Joe actually starting to sort of pick up to where maybe like Chicago was as far as attendance? And why was Detroit picked as the site for WrestleMania 3?
Usually these towns these cities get picked, not towns or cities. They get picked for they do a little bit of romancing with the WWE. They have to go in. I went there the last time I was there. I was in Detroit, was for the Hall of Fame, with Fuji was getting inducted, and I was inducting him, and they blocked off all they blocked up 3 nights in a row because we had the movie, we had the movie one night, we had the Hall of Fame the next night, and then the third night we had the WrestleMania. This isn't the one the WrestleMania 3. This is the one where Fuji got inducted.
Yeah, it's like 22.
But each night they had buses going from the hotels. I think we were at a Marriott or something a bit out of town. And we have police escorts on the buses. All the buses that left that went, and they blocked the freeways off, and we just we just have free run from the hotel to the building. So the city was working along with the WWF in sponsoring these events, because it brought in, I think that Joe Louis said like 80,000, and your figures may differ from people that don't like the figures for WWF, but they're calling it 80,000 attendance. And that brings people from, you got maybe 25,000 of your own, your local people, Detroit people, but everybody else comes from out of town. It's like a Super Bowl or like a boxing in Vegas or something. Everybody comes from out of town. So there's hotels and restaurants and rent-a-cars and, everything. So it's a big boom for the city. It's a big financial rush for just about, everybody concerned with that aspect.
As far as WrestleMania 3 was concerned, was there a lot of international fans coming in, do you know, or is that something you wouldn't have really noticed?
I wouldn't have known. No. Geez, what did Meltzer say? 70,000, 60,000 now?
78,000, Meltzer said.
78. And he knew that how?
Zane Bresloff said it was around 78,000. He was the guy who promoted the event locally, and he said it was more like 78,000. But WWF says it was 93,000 something, which just pipped. Was it the Pope who went there?
Yeah. The Pope from New Orleans. Pope in New Orleans. Yeah.
Yeah, so they wanted to get a better attendance figure than the Pope, apparently.
Yeah,
So that's why they
we're
arrived at that
bigger
number.
like John Lennon, they're bigger than Jesus. Yeah.
I'll move on then. And WrestleMania 1 is very well known as Vince McMahon claiming that, he remortgaged his house to put on the big event, bring Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper and everything else. WrestleMania 2 was also a bit of a financial gamble. Do you know if WrestleMania 3 had the same amount riding on it as far as Vince McMahon's personal fortune?
Personally, no, I don't know. I would imagine by 3 that stuff was pretty well set there, and the card was Hogan and Andre was pretty. They'd taken their time, and they brought it up. They brought it up well. And Hulk was probably at his peak, right around his peak right then, peak popularity, and and of course with all like the other cards, they had a hell of a backing too.
In modern days, now with WrestleMania, you almost get a week off, maybe 5 days off or something like that for WrestleMania, and you have to do the Access and whatever it may be called, signings in the Hall of Fame, and then WrestleMania. Honky Tonk Man says that you worked the night before WrestleMania 3. Do you remember where it was?
Oh, no, I don't. If he said it, probably true. I'm sure. I don't remember where or if it was, but I'm sure if he says it, I'm sure it's probably the truth. It's not unlikely. It's not unlike WD, the book you and I remember we had a big one in Indianapolis, one of those big pay-per-views after the pay-per-views were kind of running. And I think it was Chicago. One of the boys was coming from and got in a snowstorm and with Hercules, in fact, we'll talk about later. But Herc was coming from everybody else had flown in or come in early or was in there, and he left. He was with his girlfriend, left Chicago, wherever the hell we were, the night before, and he got stuck in the snow, and he got there just as the match was ending, and that was. Vince just put his arm, hugged him, and said, "That's it. Show up next time."
Yeah. I would have thought he got a fine at least for that. But speaking of car trouble. Reports are that getting to the Pontiac Silverdome was an absolute nightmare for traffic. Did you end up getting caught in it?
Oh no, we went in hours ahead of time. The day of the show, we were there. We were there probably around noon. That was the start of they'd have the big meals and everything else all laid out for us and stuff like that. So yeah, it was. We were never at probably late. Well, leaving we left late too. We couldn't leave because you couldn't open the door in the back. Where the locker rooms and where the locker in the back there, they have the place is so air conditioned and so the temperature and everything else that you couldn't open the doors while the event was going on. Everything would get blown out the door. I don't know if they just wanted to keep everybody around to the end of the show or what was going on.
Silverdome, what was it like backstage? Because it ended up getting, torn down a few years later, so I can't imagine it was recently renovated.
It was, this is the old, the old Silverdome. So it was a football set up for the Detroit Lions before they moved to the Joe Louis, where we had the other WrestleMania Fuji got his Hall of Fame induction too. So it was, big locker room, just big, nice. It was set up for the NFL and the Lions and whatever team they came in. So we just used their facilities. They were nice, first class.
Good stuff. We'll get to the celebrities then. So I've got a list of Bob Uecker, Alice Cooper, Aretha Franklin, and a lady called Mary Hart, who I have no idea who she is. Apparently Entertainment Tonight. Did you get photos with any of them? Did you meet any of them? Are there any stories at all, hopefully, about Bob Uecker?
Bob Uecker's the coolest guy. He was just, they brought him in to, he had some connection with Andre. He was traveling with Andre.
Was he?
And yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. He was going to be a referee or going to be, I don't know I forget what his position was. But they had him hanging around with Andre. And now, all kinds of, a lot of Bobby Heenan quips, a lot of stories. But he was a funny guy. I can't pick up anything. There I go and scratch my nose. I go like sitting there with a grandma blow or something, trying to get through this thing. But no, he was a funny guy. Oh, real self-deprecating, humorous, funny. This everything. Not a superstar at all. He was one of the boys. Well, he was a major league ball player. Then he was the announcer for Cleveland Indians. Did the play-by-play, the color of the play-by-play. He was a day-to-day announcer. He was just a funny guy. Aretha Franklin just shook her hand. God, she had an entourage that would, hundreds.
Did you hear that she got stuck in traffic and she didn't even do a sound check because she was that late? They just ushered her straight into the ring.
Wow. There's so much going on. It's hard to keep up, and it's hard to know a lot of the, a lot of the stories just come to you now, or much later that even happened. The Piper was coming out of L.A. where he just got electrocuted. So he was, he was giving it that bit, So, it was, all those big shows now are an experience, So back then, it was just, we had a couple of King of the Ring, and but they weren't traditional. They weren't traditional shows as they are now. SummerSlam and whatever, King of the Ring, whatever, all the other ones they have now, which they primarily moved to pay-per-view now.
Just going on Bob Uecker, one more thing is, was he just like a super wrestling fan? Or did he just spot a bunch of people who liked to party and just got on with everybody?
I think that's it, the latter. He may have been a wrestling fan. He didn't come across as one, but he was just, he was having fun. He had as good a time as anybody. He's always breaking people up. He was, he had as much fun as anybody there. Andre would hit him in the nuts or something for something. And then, Andre loved him. So, he had to be a good guy.
If Andre will put up with you, you must have something about you.
Yeah, Andre will grab your nuts. You got to be a good guy.
Yeah, maybe you picked up the tab.
Yeah. Andre didn't have deep pockets. He would spend, he'd spend and drink. He was he was so busy, entertaining himself that, if you happen to be along for the ride. Remember in Hawaii here one time, he used to come and stay when we lived in the Ambassador. John told us and all this. We went across the street. There's a nice place, Nick's Fish Market, in Waikiki. And he had a girlfriend from San Francisco, Andre, big tall lady. And so we went in there and had a couple beers. And, I didn't hang around. I think I was a heel anyway. Me and John went over, had a couple of drinks with them, and then so I guess the tab came $500-600 in those days, which is pretty big money, back in whatever 80s, 80s or late 70s it was. And Tolos wasn't a guy to go out and spend. And, he was very, very conservative with his money and stuff. So we were going on a plane going out our island the next day to work on one of the islands. And John goes, "Oh, that giant, cost me $500 at the bank at the bar last night." And nobody would jump on it and go, "Yeah, right. You never spent, you would never, that'd be the day you drop in." But nobody ever picked up on it. So it kind of left like he was complaining about dropping the $5 bills at the bar, and he left him yeah, 500. He's waiting for somebody to make a comeback. And nobody ever said anything. Because the giant picked up the whole tab, even if you're just walking through or whatever. But, Joe told us, got on the plane, the giant's girlfriend gave birth to a 9-pound tongue. Yeah. He's quite an amorous giant. Getting back to, but that ties in with Detroit WrestleMania 3 anyway.
I'll weirdly enough, I think Andre the Giant's amorousness may be coming up later, but I think we can. We might have to. Well, I'm not sure we're going to top that one, quite frankly, but we'll see if we can do. I'm going to go on to the matches now, and the very first match is you and Bob Orton versus the Can-Am Connection. Just a sort of like almost like a technical thing, almost. Stadium shows that we hear many wrestlers say the sound just goes straight up, and you don't get that reverberation, that instant feedback from the fans. The Silverdome is roofed, but it's so cavernous. Was that kind of the same deal where you didn't realise if the fans were cheering or booing, at least immediately?
There are the sound effects are a little different in those huge arenas like that. What was so blown away in that is just when you got up and you're standing in the middle of the ring looking up. You're at the top tier of the building looked like you could almost see, looked like you're close enough to see, but you knew they're quite a distance apart. But it looked to seem to be a good, good view from wherever you were. I remember Joe Louis. I went to that with Fuji. Way up, we went to they had a service room up on like the 8th or 9th floor or something like that, and they had TVs and stuff. But looking down at the ring. From up there, it just looked like a little postage stamp. I don't know why would people be sitting up there trying to just to be at the event, I suppose.
Cheap tickets, I believe, as well. So that's probably why.
Could be.
I am gonna. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to re-ask this. I'm screwing up these questions. My eyesight's really bad at the moment.
Nice. My eyes are bleeding to death.
Hey?
Just got out of the pool.
Oh, right. I thought you said bleeding to death.
I always readjust my eyes. I'm bleeding to death.
That's what I was like. Fucking hell, Don. Jesus Christ. You want to see someone about that?
Bloodshot. It'll go.
Yeah. Okay then. One thing I really want to know is in the match, your thigh is very heavily taped. Why?
I ripped my groin. Earlier before that, all the way from below the knee was black, all the way up, my whole crotch, all the way and out to the side. My whole leg went black.
Sorry, we've got the grandson on it to sort the dogs out. So,
yeah. Come on! Probably got his earphones on. I don't have a can I can throw either. But yeah, I ripped my groin, and I'd been off for a few weeks and got back in time, to get with that. And maybe that got him. Run out of tape now. Yeah, that was like on the downturn of my when I started losing a step for working and stuff. And I realized that the end was near. Because when you tear something like that, one side is just inevitable that the other side, after you come back, is going to go too. That's not as severe, but it did pop. My right one went, and then several weeks after I got back, the left one, I got a little tear in. And the groin tears, it's hard to move. Your lateral motion, getting up. You just have you're just lost for. You need extra hand push up, and your motion's lost.
Yeah. So how did the groin injury occur in the first place then?
I was working with Greg Valentine in St. Louis. Nothing happened. Nobody touched me. Nothing happened. I did a thing where I dropped back on the leg and stretch the leg or going into a leg lock or something. Just more or less softening up the leg, and I threw my right leg up and wrapped. Just everything is just ripped there. I couldn't get up, and I just could barely walk. It was still warm there, so I could get around, and I got to the end of the match, and the next match I was in Chicago with Steamboat in a big and just talking about those 2-minute matches. I I had to hang on to Fuji and one guy and one of the ring guys to make it down to the ring. And then did a little something in the beginning. I hooked Steamboat. Fuji grabbed the salt, threw the salt. Steamboat ducked and pinned me 1, 2, 3. And then, I had to grab arms and stuff. I couldn't even get back up, barely stand back up from laying on the mat. I had to pull myself back up on the ropes and stuff. And then went back, So then I went out and chiropractor, muscles, that's electronic stimulation and stuff. It's a horrible injury. Mm. Now when I look at NFL guys and football and stuff, and I see older players, groin injuries, or guys going down with groin injuries, this guy's got to be getting old. Got to be, getting towards the end. I was about 36, 37, maybe when I did it. And that's that led to my, decline in work and stuff.
Yeah, so it slows you down, definitely. One more thing is, you didn't even get a ring entrance. Were you already in the ring when Aretha Franklin was singing, or did you sort of sneak around the side?
Oh, yeah, probably were. Yeah, I don't remember. They took us in a golf cart.
Yeah.
It was a long trip from the locker room to the. So everybody's in a cart. Tom Zink and Ricky Martel,
yeah. Tom Zink, actually. So the Can-Am Connection, you look at those two, and they just must, you just think, that's the babyface team of babyface teams. I mean, they must get all the poon in the world. Even their finisher was a double drop kick, just like the Rock and Roll Express. They were tailor-made for wrestling, and then they just sort of ended in about 8 months, 9 months. And because Tom Zank left. Do you know any memories of Tom Zank, and do you know why he left so quickly?
Just what I read, that he was, and I don't remember what I read now, but he wasn't content with his role. I suppose he wanted to go singles, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. He was doing well. I mean, they were making money. Everybody was making money, especially in that featured position. They were either the world tag team champions, or they were wrestling. They're vying for the world championship every night. Whoever whether it be Fuji and Saito or whoever it happened to be at the time, the world tag champions. The thing about the tag team belt in those days, so the tag team or the champion, that match will always win last, unless you had a cage match or something really extraordinary going on at the end, maybe a title match or, a championship match going an hour, because you'd have your angle match coming on before the intermission, so they could announce the next show, 4 or 5 weeks down the line. Oh, the promoter here just happened to sign, Morocco and Snooker for the next show here, and so, and 4 weeks from tonight or whatever it was. That was pretty much it.
Tell you what, then we're going to leave. And I'd be remiss to not mention that you took the fall in the match as well from a crossbody or something like that. But we'll brush over that because we only want to focus on your wins, not the losses. And we'll go to the next match, and it is Billy Jack Haynes versus Hercules double countout. And the last time we were talking off air, we were sort of saying our goodbyes, and then we ended up chatting for about half an hour, just amusing ourselves with different stories we'd heard. And you came up with some really good Hercules stories that, for the life of me, I can't remember what they were. Do you remember what they were?
Hercules, he was a wild man. In those days, he was just nicest guy in the world. Nicest guy in the world, but he just. He was just off, he was just, he had, he'd get mad. He'd get, we were at in Tennessee one day, and that same girlfriend, he had her with him, and we're eating, late night dinner at some place, catching a hamburger or a steak or something after the matches. And some guys came in. He got immediately jealous. It was for no, they weren't doing anything or didn't say anything to us. And I guess, he got jealous of the girlfriend, went out and hit a win. It was freezing outside, snow in Tennessee of all places. And just the whole windshield just cracked up. Hercules he was a wild man. he was a good hand. I don't know why. Well, he was the only one that held himself back. Vince loved him. Everybody liked him. His work was great. His body was, he looked like Hercules. So just himself. Time and he would just go places. And I'd come back.
Did I tell you the story that I heard on another interview with Jim Duggan? And I don't know if I can't remember where it was. Basically, Hercules was kissing someone he thought was a woman, and it apparently wasn't. And someone went to Jim Duggan and said, "Shouldn't someone smarten up Hercules?" And Jim just went, "I don't think he cares." And that was the end of it.
Oh God. That was probably in Oklahoma and Louisiana territory, because I don't think.
So that story didn't make the rounds in the WWF then.
No. Herc would have probably squashed it real fast if it did too.
Yeah.
He would have just smiled. He would have just laughed and shrugged it off. I know Paul Roma talked. They were partners for a while, and Roma loved him. Roma thought what a great, and he was. I was around him a lot too. He was a hell of a guy. So I was surprised when he passed so early. Well, not too surprised, but just already gone back to Tampa, found God, married his first wife that he had a bunch of kids with, and was real calm, really settled down. Which he wasn't a real wild guy anyway. He wasn't a cokehead or anything. He just he's just kind of forgetful. Kind of his own way.
Yeah. I'll move on to the next match then, and it is, of course, Hillbilly Jim, Haiti Kid, Little Beaver over King Kong Bundy, Little Tokyo, and Lord Littlebrook by DQ, because Bundy elbowed one of the midgets, and then all the midgets turned on him. This sort of marks the end, at least in my eyes, towards the end of when the WWF sort of veered away from bringing in the midgets once every so often. Do you remember what the arrangement was with bringing in the little guys? Because I know it was only a brief thing, and then they moved on to the next territory. And also, who were some of the great midget wrestlers that you remember?
Well, I know Littlebrook was booking him. Littlebrook was the booker out of Kansas City. Cowboy Lane and Haiti Kid. Haiti Kid was like he followed me around like my little son. Wacko. He was just what's Don? He had a little. I was in Australia. I was fooling around with him. I said, "Don't move, Haiti. Here comes the bus." I'd be punching him, and then go into his pocket, trying to steal his wallet. You crazy, Don. Get you crazy. He said, and all the people in the bus watching this guy beat up a little black midget driving by. Crazy. Hey, go, Bobby here. Oh God, he was a good kid. Yeah, I don't know. Well, Vince, they're going out. They're working their way away from the midgets and the ladies as well, going into their own. Well, that's soon after that. Rockin' Robin and Sherry and those ladies came in, and they kind of had their own territory. Wendy Richter from WrestleMania 1. So those girls are still coming around and being from time. The midgets, Little Beaver and Sky Low. There were two of the originals, but they were two of the best. Beaver and Sky. They were two the Sky talked like R2D2 or the little one, the C-3PO or whatever, the Star Wars, the little small robot. He had that in. He started screaming and yelling, and Beaver had the Beaver from Montreal, so he had the French Canadian accent. So but those guys could do anything. Those, and then the other, who else was in there? Well, Haiti Kid. And
of the list I gave you, Haiti Kid, Little Beaver, Little Tokyo, Lord Littlebrook.
Oh, Little Tokyo, he was a good solid. So it must have been Littlebrook and Tokyo were the heels, and Beaver and Kid were the babies with Hillbilly Jim. Yeah. I almost got killed one night. I slammed. I picked up 80 Kid and power slam. I almost got mobbed. People didn't like that.
Was this on the side of a
speech there.
road? Is this on the side of a road again in Australia? Or
No, this is the ring. This is in the ring. He would run as soon as he get in the territory. He'd come and find me, and then he'd be by my side.
Was he? Were you always like buying him the beer and stuff like that? It's like, right, here's the guy I need to hang around with.
Well, maybe. But I took care of him. I know where to eat, know where to go. He was a good kid. In Hawaii, I'd always play with him. Maybe like get in front of people, I'd be picking on him and stuff. Like, it's not, and just watch people's reactions. Bullying a little tiny black guy. And then, get some good heat.
Oh, dear. We'll move on to the next one, Harley Race versus Junkyard Dog. And the question I've got for you is, by 1987, JYD was sort of maybe on the downturn a little bit out of Vince McMahon's favour and everything. But by 1988, and I remember this from when I was a bit younger and I used to watch the Saturday, the prime time. And they do the commentary weeks in advance for the matches. So they clearly knew that JYD was on the way out. And they just, cover your ears, ladies, shit on JYD on commentary like I've never heard before. I was like, why was JYD like just fell out of favour so quickly with Vince?
I have no idea. Well, his style no longer suited what Vince wanted to do. He when he first came in, he got over like $1 million. A big, impressive guy with the chain and the music and the dancing and the kids and everything else. And his work was adequate. He wasn't a high flyer or anything, but he was so big and good muscular, good condition and stuff like that. He didn't like to work. He wasn't a hard worker by any means, but he drew money. He was a good card. Maybe by that time, obviously, I wasn't really privy to the the announcers or the vocal work that was going on at the time, unless I happened to sit by and follow a podcast, a broadcast or something. But I didn't have no idea they were slamming him like that. His work was slow. His work, but he still held a place on the card. He still had a place in the territory as a they're going to merchandising and things like that. That where he was, the chains and the dogs, the dolls and everything else. He was a part of. It was like Vince McMahon. If you want to go back to Paul Orndorff, myself and Paul Orndorff, we're kind of like mirror images of heels. Good workers, good talkers, solid performers, and everything else. And we were like the two stepping stones for baby faces or for heels that went to Hogan. I had my great run with Snuka before that. Then Paul came in and he double crossed Hulk, and he had a super run with Hulk there, with the Toronto show and all the, going all around the territories with him. So we were, I was magnificent and he was wonderful, but it kind of set the stage for all the other characters that would come in eventually, your Ultimate Warriors, and your all your merchandising people, Big Boss Man, and right on down the line, all your characters that would come out of society and be more relatable to your public. So all these guys, that they became, and I don't know, I'm not sure there was in Vince's giant plan to build it like that with, two solid heels like by Paul and myself to work through and everybody to work through it, to have as, to have as setup guys for Hulk or, setup guys for whoever, they wanted to, the angle got in, but that's how it turned out. And how it turned into merchandising, after a while, the honky tonks with the Elvis and the, Harley with the crown, the king, and all these guys, with the different, like I say, Ultimate Warrior and all those merchandising gimmicks. It's just the Bulldogs and all the outfits and the costumes and everything else that were formed that came out after that. You know, it's just like the formation.
I've not teed you up for this next question. I've just thought about it because you've always said you never had an extended program with Hulk Hogan. You only had a few arena matches, and then you moved on to whoever you moved on to around 1985. Do you, in the long run, think that was maybe a good thing that you weren't losing to Hulk Hogan around the entire country, and then you sort of maintained where you're at in the card, or would you have preferred, as you said, the Paul Orndorff, bigger paychecks, you're working with the man, and then you move down and do something else afterwards? Are you do you wish that you had the big?
I had a lot of good runs with Hulk. I had 3 shows in the Garden, and I had a lot of shows. I didn't fall off. I'd have the run with Snuka previously, which probably took a lot out of my character and stuff like that. And but I had some good runs with Hulk, and maybe not being on television, it allowed me to go to the Steamboat or to different guys like that, and onto different angles and stuff like that without being like I'm saying, we're like stepping stones with the baby faces get to us, and then or the heel, or make them, the heels they'd get over us, and then face a new heel and use them to get over the new heel, like Boss Man, or like oh God,
Rick Rude.
Yeah, okay, like I would beat. Who are we talking about? Somebody, an up and coming babyface that was going to, and then from them they would feed him to a Rude or something, where Rude could get to Hulk, and that just as a stepladder type effect, or Orndorff. Orndorff didn't care for doing jobs after a while. He was paranoid about that, but which actually, aside from his neck, caused his leaving there. But yeah, they did. It was like a cycle. I don't know if Vincent had that in his master plan, working on it to going to the. He had advisors and everything else as far as the merchandising and the marketing and everything else went.
We'll move on to the next match then, and Dream Team over the Rougeau brothers. All I've written is Dream Team explodes. Brutus splits off on Greg and is replaced by Dino. I think I meant to write a question and then I just left it blank, so we'll move on. Roddy Piper versus Adrian Adonis. The next question about that is, it was billed as Roddy's retirement match. How long beforehand, because I know you were running with Roddy Piper, I mean, he was a babyface in the last few months, but you must have still been fairly close with him. When did you first understand that he was looking to retire for good from the wrestling, and really was he looking to retire, or was he just looking to make one final house show run and sell some extra tickets and then come back after a bit, which he did?
Roddy was always pitching. I don't know if he was going to be I'm sure, I don't know if he had it planned to come back later or not. He was enamored by the movies. He was, I remember he was David Wolf, Cyndi Lauper's boyfriend at the time?
Yeah, earlier. I think so, yeah.
David Wolf, he was close with him and did a lot of plotting, and the people at Disney. He wanted to get into movies, really wanted to get into movies. So maybe as a thought, he was thinking of it as a retirement match to get, to further his movie career and to move on into movies. But obviously, he didn't get the roles and stuff that I suppose that he needed to, or the momentum like The Rock or one of those guys had.
Are you saying that Hell Comes to Frogtown was not on your 10 best films of 1987 or 88 list then?
I watched his movies. I don't know about lists, but yeah, They Live with the Glasses, the one with the glasses.
They Live's great film. I absolutely love They Live. It's a brilliant film.
Really?
Oh, I loved it. Oh, why were you not as keen?
It was a little off the wall.
It's got the world's longest fight scene, though, at least, so you've got to appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, maybe not. A solid 2-star film, maybe in Don's film ranking. We'll move on to the next match then. Hart Foundation, Danny Davis over the Bulldogs and Tito Santana. I didn't write anything about that. The next one was Butch Reed over Coco Beware. I'll bring up Butch Reed in a minute, but I've heard a couple of stories recently that really stunned me. That it turns out that Coco Beware is an absolute stone cold badass, and it's just every fight he's been in, whether he started it or not, and he never seemed to start it, he always finishes. Any stories of Coco just taking people to town?
I know he was in a couple fights. Couple of Paul Roma. He and Paul Roma got in a fight in Chicago. I don't know over what. I think it was a slur or something, N-word or something came about. But I remember that they broke it up. I didn't see any of it. I didn't know. I didn't know where to see it. But I saw Roma came back and they're effing back and forth at each other after they broke it apart. But so there's a big imprint of teeth on Paul's back. You can see the outline of the teeth on the. No, neither one of them were worse for wear, aside from the bite marks. But that's the only fights I was around. So on the time, except the time in Toronto, he knocked the hell out of me.
Oh yes,
that was a friendly concussion. That wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he wanted to drop kick me into the next week. I don't know.
Maybe you looked at Frankie the Parrot the wrong way, and that was a receipt
for
it.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever hear of the? I believe it was on the same tour that you and Nick Botwinkle had your, back and forth going on with. That Coco smashed the crap out of Jim Troy. It might have been the same tour, I think. Did you ever hear about that?
I don't think it was the same tour.
Oh, was it a different tour? I know it was a European tour.
Well, the tours I was on with Jim Troy, they were in the Middle East, the Kuwait and Abu Dhabi, Oman, Dubai, Qatar. That's when Jim Troy gave him the Middle East at first, and Coco wasn't on that one. I only went on one. Fuji was running a lot of the Middle East tours as well. So, but no, I don't. I read it the other day in some publishing stuff that Coco and Jim Troy had gotten into it. And Jim Troy was allegedly a pretty tough guy. He was a hockey player, and he was seemed to be a pretty rugged guy.
But he didn't reckon on the awesome power of, who would have known it, Coco Beware, the toughest man in wrestling all of a sudden.
A bad dude.
Next match then.
Coco never really bothered anybody though. I mean, not Coco, yeah. Coco, he never bothered anybody. He seemed to always be, pretty genuine guy. Kept to himself. Didn't, or maybe if there were black guys, maybe some black guys around, he would hang with them, but we weren't overrun with black guys. SD, a lot of those guys are gone by that time, and I don't think JY and him weren't very close. So yeah, he wasn't around. He kept himself. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know he was fired after the Jim Troy fight and then rehired shortly after.
Oh yeah,
so,
Jim and Junior were uptight and out of sight.
Yeah,
they're buddies. Yeah.
He did get rehired shortly afterwards. I know that. For some reason, I've got in my mind the chandelier may have got broken. I can't remember. Maybe I'm going crazy. But I'll move on to the next fight, the next match, and Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat for the IC title. Highly regarded amongst wrestling fans.
All-time greatest match ever taken, ever wrestled, ever completed. Yeah, it was a hell of a match. I was by that time, and so was Adonis and Piper as well. So the build-ups for that. Yeah, it was a hell of a match. A lot of false finishes. Two great workers. You got Boat, you got Macho Man. So it's And then, you hear all the reports now with this 51 items or 59, 50 something items, all listed one by spot by spot by spot. I've never seen that, never done that, never heard about, never even tried, even the 80-gram finishes and stuff like that were, 10 minutes long in preparation and stuff. Never did the 8 by 11 and a half legal binding paper.
I was actually going to bring up that you tagged with Savage a couple of times around 86. So I take it he never said, oh, I was going to try the impression, I'm not going to. But he says, listen, brother, this is how it's going to go down. Then he gets the scroll out.
I work with Randy?
Yeah, you tagged with him against a couple of people.
I tagged with him.
Yeah.
Oh, well, those are pretty much easy going then. I tagged with him. I tagged with Warrior. I tagged with a bunch of guys that weren't didn't last long. Probably just had me in there to do the job.
I don't suppose you know anyone else who was big on pre-preparing matches, do you?
Jeez, I hadn't thought of it. No, not offhand. Not to that extent, anyway.
No, not to that extent, anyway. I take it it was slightly sarcastic at the beginning, the greatest match of all time and everything. That's obviously probably like a Dave Meltzer thing, the newsletters all raving about it at the time. Wait, did you actually watch it at the time or watch it back later? Or
Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, were you like completely enamored with it, or was it just like, oh, it's a good match?
Great match. Great. Timing was. Great match. There's been others before and since. So it's. But they got what they wanted to get accomplished. They got accomplished. So it was whatever they set out to do, they got it done. And it was one of the fun. As far as pay-per-view and spectacles and stuff like that, to its time, it been one of the fine technical matches. I'm sure that there's other matches where you have feuds and death feuds and death wishes and stuff going on. That the intensity was there, but with minus the intensity or minus an angle or minus anything else. Yeah, their work and their performance was, 5 stars.
Moving on to the next match then. So we've got Honky Tonk Man over Jake the Snake Roberts. But rather than either of those two, I'm going to mention that Steamboat obviously won the belt in the previous match. And then he lost it maybe only a couple of months later to Honky Tonk Man. Do you remember this? I've heard the reasons and everything, but what do you remember the reasons being that Ricky Steamboat's title reign was so short?
Maybe the traveling. Maybe his wife got his first wife. I don't know if his first wife, but the lady he was married to at the time, Bonnie. She wanted to be part of the on the business. They got the kid. Maybe she might have come off the road. Maybe she got pregnant at the time, and she didn't want him traveling all the time. I don't really know what the reason was. Maybe it was just because he'd been on the road with the rest of us all the time. And so I don't know why. Steamboat was a hell of a hand. Easy to get along. Easy for the office, easy for the fans. Easy on the boys. It was never a problem. So I don't know what the thinking was on that.
No, you're probably right there. The original person that Ricky Steamboat was supposed to lose the Intercontinental Championship to was Butch Reed. I don't know if you knew Butch Reed too well. He apparently was in line to win the belt off Ricky, and then he all of a sudden started no-showing towns, and then got fired, and then Honky Tonk Man took his place. Butch Reed memories, and do you remember the period when he actually started no-showing towns?
I don't remember when he started no-showing. As a matter of fact, he and I worked a little angle. We had a little program going at one time, and then when we were heels, we travel a lot together, or we're in the same towns, and we hung out. And he was an athlete, football player. Great in college. I think he played a little bit of pro. and great, athlete in that sense. Good worker, good guy in the ring, good to have in the ring. Nice guy to be around. I don't know what happened at the end. Maybe it was, that's usually drugs and no showing. Drugs or women too.
Yeah.
Take your pick. Had nothing to do with money, because everybody's making their money. Everybody's making their bread.
Yeah, it's probably burnout or something similar.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the semi-main event. Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov over the Killer Bees disqualification. This is the match that Iron Sheik claimed he was going to, and this is many years later, break the back of B. Brian Blair, rape him in the bottom, and make him humble. Where did this absolute hatred of B. Brian Blair from the Iron Sheik come from?
I have no idea. I thought it was all a work. I thought, because I was at I think one of the last autograph shows I did, they had a roast for I think they were roasting the Sheik, and Brian Blair got up there and somebody slapped somebody. Either the Sheik slapped Brian or Brian slapped the Sheik, something like that. They're talking about amateur wrestling and shooting and stuff. It was from the podium. So I figured it was all a work. That there was, because it was when Brian was just first starting to run for office in Florida for political. Started running the political office and stuff, and I thought maybe they were going to use it. I didn't. I had no idea. Wrestlers get in a fight. You figure it's on a podium in a roast. You figure it's two wrestlers getting in a fight. You figure it's got to be a setup.
Yeah.
So I wasn't. I was just flying in to do autographs and stuff anyway. Sell pictures and autographs. I think it's the last one I did.
And B. Brian Blair, easy for me to say, he has once given the reason that originally they had issues with each other is because Brian bested Iron Sheik in some sort of like amateur wrestling, joking around in a hotel or backstage or something like that. Because Iron Sheik didn't realise that Brian had been trained by Hiro Matsuda and actually had some experience wrestling, and apparently that stuck in Iron Sheik's craw.
That could very well be the truth. Brian was a hell of an athlete himself. College football player, college wrestler. And then, like you say, he went through that whole Matsuda sportatorium wrestling initiation with all the, and he could take care of himself, obviously. And maybe the Sheik was I think the Sheik was wrestling in Florida. So they usually you grab younger guys, and Sheik was not younger, but newer guys to wrestling. They put them in the, put the amateurs on the amateurs at first to go, to wear you out, and then bring in the old pros and they're going to hook you and stuff like that. Could have been from that. I don't know why they cared. I never saw any animosity between the two of them outside of anywhere. Just that one angle at the at the autograph show in New Jersey. That's the only thing I saw. I don't know. That's the first time I heard about Ryan getting his back broken and being sodomized in the ring. I know
I'll have to send you the clip, the original clip. It's still hilarious. But moving on from that, because I don't have the copyright and therefore can't put it on YouTube, we'll move on to the main event. And of course, it's why pretty much everybody was there for Andre the Giant challenging Hulk Hogan for the WWF title. And I'm going to ask some questions about Andre first. And obviously in the 1980s, everybody was pretty much concerned with their own stuff. You're on the road 367 days a year, making 4,000, doing 4,000 matches a year. It's just crazy time. Did you have any idea that the WWF were positioning Andre to become a heel before it played out on television?
No, I don't think so. But Hulk was in there. Hulk had the pencil himself. So what else? And Hulk liked to be, Hulk liked to be the star, so nothing's going to make you a bigger star than slamming the Giant and pinning him in front of however many people, whoever claims to be, whatever the attendance was. So, it's sure it was a place Hulk had to go. Andre could barely walk by that time. He was slow, and he wasn't moving. His back was bad.
Yeah. Do you remember when the back issues started really kicking in?
As he aged, his body, the wear and tear on his body, whether it be from the road, and he spent a lot of time on the road as well. He was with us. He traveled with us pretty much. All the big shows, not the real small shows, but I remember with Scranton, they had a big show going on in the Meadowlands Arena with somebody, and there was Andre and me and John Studd and Andre and Jimmy, I think, in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the same night they had a giant show in the Meadowlands. So he did a lot of the smaller towns, and he became but that wore on him. It all wore on him.
Did you, just because you brought up that match, I don't know if it was the same one, but did you ever hear the legend of Andre the Giant falling asleep during a match in the early 80s?
No.
Oh, damn it. All right, then I'll move on then.
Who's that with?
It's because you said Big John Studd, and I think Big John Studd was in the match. It was like a tag match or something, and it was around maybe 84. And apparently he fell asleep in the middle of the ring, and they had to wake him up. He was probably in a leg lock, and then he just fell asleep because he was so bored, and then they had to wake him up again to carry on the match.
Maybe he was so drunk. Maybe he drank. Maybe he finished that. Maybe he finished that box of wine. It wasn't a box. It was a box. A 12-pack of Beaujolais or whatever he was drinking.
Only the finest gallons.
Well, he spent money. The Giant spent. He lived good, but he'd walk in with bottles, 5, 6, 7 bottles of red before kill most of them before the match too.
Well, it's probably I don't know, maybe. Well, do you know what? He's probably in pain, wasn't he? And then just numbs the pain out, and then he can carry on for another day.
Well, when he broke his ankle, then they used Killer Khan as the guy that broke his ankle. He stepped in something and broke his ankle. So when they had to go in and they had to fix the bone. They had the surgery on his ankle. So when the story goes, I wasn't there naturally. The story goes, the anesthesiologist, the guy who's going to put him to sleep, came in and says, "Well," and he had no idea how much drugs to give a Giant, So the only thing he goes, "Well, what do you drink?" The vodka boss says, "Oh, okay. How much vodka? 1 bottle? And 2 bottles?" Yeah, 3. About 3 bottles of vodka to get a good buzz on, to get drunk. Yeah, so that was how the anesthesiologist geared his pain medicine to Andre. His vodka. He was drinking vodka in those days. His vodka consumption.
It's probably like 1/2 of vodka, and I'd be out. You could do surgery on me without the anesthetic.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be way gone. When was Andre the Giant's peak, as far as you were concerned? Because you probably, you were in territories with him, I assume, for a week or two when he'd come in. When was his big peak, and what were some of the moves he could do in his younger days?
The foot, he did all the basic, a lot of the basic moves. That splash, he didn't have to do, his size was pretty much. I don't think he did anything, anything over the top. But he was, he did a lot of. I tell you, the time he volleyballed me from the floor.
No, you didn't.
Back. Oh, it was Bill Watts in Florida. And I was a baby face. I was skinny then. I was about 225, 230. I was just a lean, mean machine. So it was me. I was still in the Jack Briscoe lookalike era. It was me and maybe Bob Armstrong. Probably Bob Armstrong. A tag with Ole Anderson. He'd come down from Georgia. And Dusty was about to switch babyface in Florida. So they didn't want to pin Dusty. And it was me and Andre. tag partners. So it was me and Andre against Dusty and Ole. Main event Tampa. So I think it was a Watts finish or somebody's finish. So they did something where we knocked Dusty onto the floor, got rid of Dusty, and Ole never beat the shit out of me. Ole grabbed me, and Andre had gone around to chase Dusty or something, but come back to our side to get into the ring. So Ole got me, beat me down, grabbed me, and threw me over the top rope. Well, somebody went out on the floor was Andre, standing on the floor, caught me. Well, you got to lay yourself up perfectly sideways too. You just got to put your body in the hands of the giant, and come down evenly so he can catch you, and lay your body. So Andre was on the ground. He caught me like that, and boom, pressed me back over the top rope, back into the ring. And I cross-body blocked Ole and pinned him with 1, 2, 3. That was a match. Then he said, "Hey, boss, I go everywhere now, and they try to do same finish. Too hard." And they had other guys trying to do it. They wouldn't come. They'd come crooked. They'd come, it didn't work a lot of times, ever.
I can't believe that Ole took a clean finish as well. It's probably because Andre was there.
Yeah. Well, Watts was booking. Ole was down. Ole was down. They wanted to. He was getting paid for it. You know that. He didn't come down there for love. That's for sure.
I'll ask one more question about Andre, and then I'll move on. And we've alluded to it earlier, is that no less a source than Vince McMahon has said Andre the Giant had a girlfriend in every town. And there's a story that I'm not going to recount, but Virgil has claimed up to 4 girls in every town. What was it about Andre that the women sort of flocked to, other than just assuming if he's a giant, he must have a giant wang?
That's one. That's what he had. Andre spent. He lived good. You're going out. You're drinking fine wine, cognac, champagne, finest meals, limousines. When you arrived, it was here's Andre the Giant. You're your own entourage. So I imagine. I just tell you the lady in Hawaii from San Francisco with the Nick's Fish Market and stuff like that. But before that, he had a Polynesian Tongan or Fijian girlfriend that had an afro, like he had the afro too. She was like a 6'4", 6'5" lady herself. And man, they're walking together. What a sight they made. Curtis used to, used to do promos on that. Whoa, brother. Walking down this, the 2 people with the 2 giants with hairs, big afros going down the street. Made a hell of an impression.
Never had kids with him then, at least.
He had a daughter. He has a daughter. I imagine she married. He had a lot of property in North Carolina, probably all over the world. Andre was a very smart man. Because he's a giant, you forget. But no, Andre was quick. He was cribbage hands, card hands. He had the numbers, good numbers and stuff.
I'll move on then to the other side of the equation with Hulk Hogan. So as the story goes, and this will take a tiny bit of explanation, Paul Orndorff was kept off the WrestleMania 3 card in case Andre the Giant couldn't make it. Hulk Hogan, in typical Hulk Hogan fashion, has claimed that he didn't realise fully if he was going to win or lose the match until he got in the ring with Andre, and Andre took the body slam. Was Hulk Hogan always just a bullshitter in this kind of setting, just making everything out to be more of a battle or just bigger than it actually was?
I wasn't that far inside to know if he was or not. Andre could be pretty, pretty ornery at times too. I'll let you know, boss.
Yeah.
And Andre wouldn't sell anything. So but not knowing the finish and not knowing, if Andre was going to do it right or not, possibly so. Vince was going to run down to have the bell rung either. Like he did on Bret Hart, but Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Hulk wanted, had to have that feather in his cap, and that, led the first guy to slam Andre, which many did before and after. Ivan did one time, and you could slam boss. I thought, no, he would embarrass you. He'd sell so much. You'd get up, you're embarrassing me. I said, nobody's going to believe I can beat up a giant the way you're rolling around on the ground dying there. I said, get up. Curtis and I said, get up, you fat bastard. You're embarrassing me.
Did you ever attempt to slam him? Did you ever attempt to slam Andre?
Yeah, I did in Baltimore. Picked him up, barely got him over. He hit he called. I didn't call it. That, I wasn't going to run in there and try to slam him on my own. I said, no, you slam boss. What? Slam? No, slam boss. I said, oh fuck. Oops. I did that, slam him, then you watch as your testicles roll into the third row of the fans. It was. He was probably close to 500 by that time. It was no picnic.
Going on to one of the overlooked parts of the main event, Bobby the Brain Heenan. We haven't really talked about Bobby, and I know you've got a ton of stories. And especially one thing I wish had chased you up on about Bobby is that when we were talking about the most famous ring rat, Angel, Bobby the Brain always had monologues about her. Do you remember any of the monologues about her?
Well, Bobby didn't have really monologues. He just had zingers. How she dyed rainbow colors and dyed herself in colors and stuff. I didn't know. I never got a peek, but
oh right then.
She colored her pubis area, and just different thing. Different stories. And he talked to her, and dig her for material. She would write Arndorf's letters. She wanted to have other guys watch him and other. She was a character. Bobby, Bobby is, it was a source of comedy. He was there. He was all over it. He was quizzing her and getting stories, and like Ray Stevens, if they're worth telling, they're worth enhancing.
Did Bobby travel on the road with everybody, or was he just purely the big shows and the TVs, and that was it? And did any managers go on the road?
Half and half. Fuji, well, they were moving to managers at that point. Gosh, I don't know if Bobby. I know he made a lot of shows. I know he wasn't on a lot of shows. If there was an angle or something, the WWE never had run-ins like they have now. Every match, somebody runs in. But in those days, that was pretty much reserved for down south or Florida or those areas there. So WWE never had a lot of run-ins, and the managers didn't do a lot, apart from Fuji and a couple. I'm sure probably it a trip to couple of guys. Excuse me, trip to a couple of guys or distracted referees at times. But as far as actually, causing, I don't know. I was always involved in a different area of the card.
If there's a good Bobby Heenan story that you have tucked away, this is the time to tell it. Do you have any good ones stashed away?
You hit me this. I don't. The dollar, the bill, the money in Buffalo.
Nope, don't remember it.
Okay. The boys used to stay at Howard Johnson in New Jersey, and that's where they had their hookups and everything. The guys, and one of the Cuban fellows there, it would give you the cocaine all wrapped up in a currency note, $1, $20, whatever it happened to be. And I don't think Bobby was into any of that cocaine or anything, but the guy had given him the bill earlier the night before at the Howard Johnson. And he, caught the plane the next day to Buffalo. They're working in Buffalo. So we're at the rent-a-car stand. Everybody's, getting the rent-a-cars. I guess we had Buffalo, Rochester, a couple towns up there, upstate New York. So we're getting the rent-a-car. So Bobby's he's fooling around in his pocket. He finds this bill, note, $1 bill, $20 bill, whatever it is, folded up in his pocket. He said, "That's odd. What the hell is this?" And they're there with the girl, and he starts opening it, and he opens it, and he boom, and he gets it, and he snaps it open. Coke goes flying all over the rent-a-car, all over the. He's wiping it up. Yeah, he had no idea what was going down. Sheik didn't like him for some reason.
Really?
Iron Sheik, yeah. I don't know why. Sheik didn't like a lot of people. Sheik was, I guess, drunkest. I don't know. You can cut this if you want to use this or not. I don't know. But Sheik told me the story. Jabroni, they just about this and that. And Jabroni, he with me in the room, and he drunk. He take off clothes, and he pass out face first on the bed. He want me to, and then when the Sheik says it, he want me to, but I don't put him over. Sheik don't put him over. And Sheik is hard too. Sheik is hard, but I don't put son of a bitch over. No. And Sheik is hard too. He's so I don't know. They were getting ready to honeymoon or at least step out in the town. Bobby had no idea. Well, he not passed out. He just working. He waiting for Sheik. Oh my God. So there's a lot of stories you can't really tell. Can't really get into detail and podcasts with different lifestyles and different guys. The Sheik was a classic.
We've got to do an Iron Sheik's full episode, and those stories have to be told. The ones where the statute of limitations have probably run out.
Yeah,
or are they just that
most
bad?
Most of the guys have passed away anyway. So you're in good shape.
Yeah, but Sheiky's still kicking somehow. He's
Yeah,
still going.
only the good die young. Him and I are going to live forever.
I hope so. I'll ask you a couple more, then we'll wrap this up very quickly. The big rematch, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. I mean, obviously Hulk Hogan won the WrestleMania 3 thing. The big rematch, Saturday night's main event, maybe like 11 months later, February 5th, in fact, 1988. Were you in the building for the switching of the Hebner's referee finish at the time? The 33 million people who tuned in witnessed Hogan lose the title to
When
Andre.
was this?
1988,
What year was that?
February.
Yeah, I was gone.
No, you were still there for a few more months.
I was still there. Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe I was. I didn't know Dave had a brother. I didn't know he had a twin. Nobody knew he had a twin. Well, not nobody. It wasn't well known among the wrestlers and stuff that he had a twin brother, and so identical twins too, as far as you could see. So they had that was a good angle. That was a good finish. That was. But yeah, I didn't. Nobody knew Dave. I guess they kept it quiet too. Pat, Vince, a few guys knew he had a twin.
Yeah, Earl was working at Jim Crockett Promotions, so he was on TV reffing at the time, but no one put two and two
Probably,
together.
yeah. But no, we were so wrapped up in ourselves, that we didn't know what was going. We had, I said, the Road Warriors. I just happened to catch them on TV on a Saturday, and that's. I mentioned the Fuji. You seen those guys? I said you could knock off. They're ready anywhere. I said you have a knockoff group for them, knockoff tag team for them. I said, over in a second. People love that kind of that Mad Max stuff and Fuji went to junior, and the next second you know, the Demolition was created. You know, with the spike pads and the paint, face paint and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they got over right away because the people they loved that idea. That Road Warrior idea was brilliant, I guess.
Yeah, that must be the most copied film because there was Lord Humongous, Sid. There was Mad Maxine. I think she was a lady wrestler in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
There was loads. Just that film is just a source of classic wrestling gimmicks somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After they came through,
yeah. Yeah. I'll ask a couple more and then we'll leave it. WrestleMania 3 after party. Do you remember what you did after the show?
They didn't have. It wasn't all set up back then. Just went. It was getting out of the building. That was probably I'm sure that was an ordeal. I don't remember if we have limos or rented cars or what we were doing at the time, but that was an ordeal. And by the time we got back to, we'd been in the building from like noon, from 12 hours. We probably didn't get out of the building till like midnight. So it wasn't it wasn't really Party City going on. In Vince, the last time I went, they had a band and a big hall and big area, and food and drinks and everything else set up for all the WrestleMania participants, the wrestlers and referees, and ring guys and office guys, everybody, hot wives and everything else. But that, I don't know how long that had been going on, but by WrestleMania 3, no, there was nothing. We had the lunch. Going into it, we had lunch and everything else, but there was no WWE hosted party after the match.
WrestleMania payoff. Do you remember it?
No.
Did you?
Good.
Good.
They were good. They're good.
And
but I don't. Like I said, it was a bonus, kind of like a bonus thing. But that weren't on strictly on guarantees or but time you're making an average. You're making a weekly average with your your shows and your attendance and stuff. So naturally WrestleMania week would be a ball, and whether we wrestled the night before or not, I'll go with honky tonk and say yeah. It wouldn't be unlikely, that it wouldn't be out of the realm that we weren't wrestling the night before. Why they couldn't book a spot would be beyond their reasoning. You got a ticket, you can be there.
And did you ever hear any whispers of what Andre or Hogan made? Because Pat Patterson said it was enough that you could probably retire on for that one night.
Most likely, yeah.
Did you ever hear?
Never heard figures.
No.
You don't know any?
No, I don't know any. I'd love to throw some at you, but I was heard that it was enough that you could retire on in one night. The very last question, then we'll shut down this podcast. WrestleMania, very very special event in the eyes of the fans. Was it a special event for you, or was it just another show on the never-ending treadmill of shows that you were doing in the 80s?
It was WrestleMania. It was. They were building at the time. After 1 and 2 and 3 and it was becoming like the Super Bowl when they first had it. The Green Bay and Kansas City. Nobody watched it. They didn't know. That it wasn't until now that it became a global spectacular. So it was pretty much the same thing. It was there were a lot of things coming up that did. I think it was basically by that time it was basically the only one. There hadn't been any like a yearly King of the Ring or SummerSlam or one of those other ones that are they're annual events. There were no annual. That was like 3 was like that was an annual show. So yeah, it was they were different. Obviously, the payoff, the crowd, the the amount of effort you had to put into it. So, yeah.
I reckon WrestleMania 3 for me is it runs parallel to the James Bond films in the sense that there's Dr. No and there's From Russia with Love. WrestleMania 1 and 2 where they're sort of finding the formula, and then the third film is Goldfinger, and that's the quintessential James Bond film where all James Bond films build upon it. You know, the catchphrases, the just everything about it. And WrestleMania 3 is sort of the first like true WrestleMania where it is absolutely WrestleMania, and you know, every other event is sort of built off that and made just built on the shoulders of giants in that event. But for now, I shall close this podcast. I'm going to even look in the right camera. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll rush through the plugs again: Instagram, YouTube, podcast. You know the whole bit. And sign merchandise, DonMuraco.com. And if you want to support me for whatever reason you want to support me, I've written a couple of books about The Rock and Owen Hart that you can find on Amazon.com, co.uk, and all the other ones. But for now, thank you very much for entertaining us once again, Don, and we'll catch you next week.
Hello from Sunset Beach.